Commissioner, were Alliance School District superintendents told by you in a recent conference call that their support of pausing the Common Core state standards, HB 5078, the bill, one of the bills under discussion today, that support for HB 5078 would lead to financial penalties for the Alliance school districts?
In no way, shape, or form. And Representative, I don't know where that question arises from, but I will tell you that I've had conversations with a number of superintendent groups, and in no way would I personally tie anything to anything else in the fashion you describe. Now, having said that, I would have a question for the bill's makers at some point, it doesn't have to be today, about the fact that there is a moratorium on the spending of resources to prepare for the Common Core. That's something I'm aiming to defend against. I'm trying to help all districts, including Alliance districts, continue to receive the resources they need. That's my whole purpose. I think I've made that clear in every conversation. I'm quite confident that I've made that clear in every conversation I've ever had. So that's a very peculiar question, but if you're hearing those things, Representative, I'm always willing to respond to it, but that's a very odd way of construing any conversation that we may have had.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your comments. I understand that there is a fiscal note regarding the financial, rollout of the Common Core state standards. If there were to be a moratorium, this, of course, the question that I posed was specifically directed toward Alliance school districts. So I don't wish that those listening or viewing this would have any confusion about that. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Representative Giuliano. Representative Lavielle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon. Nice
Thank
to see you,
for being with us. I will go with a quick question because we really are here to hear from the public who's been so good to come out today. But this is a question I think only you can answer. I have had numerous requests from constituents, as some of the others of us have had as well, who are, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them, and that's not really the question, who are interested in having their children opt out of taking the tests. And they have received responses either from the State Department of Education or from their school administrations telling them that the school is required to administer the tests. But nowhere is anyone able to find a reference to whether parents are allowed to do that or not. And so I guess the question is not so much are they allowed, but if they do, what are the consequences? And I wonder if you could speak to that for us.
I'd be happy to. The first thing I think it's important to say, Representative, is that the preparation of our youngsters for college and career is the goal here. And what we ought to be doing is offering explanation about the necessity of this move towards the Common Core, why these high standards are important, and why we're introducing these new assessments on an optional basis to school districts. They may opt in or opt out of Smarter or Balanced, and in a low-stakes environment, so that there ought to be lower anxiety around the taking of the tests. So I think it's important to begin with that the anxiety ought to be low. The tests essentially don't count for the key purposes that they've counted for historically. And we need to provide for experiences for youngsters and for educators to engage with the new assessments as they engage with the standards as a whole. There is no provision in federal law and there is no provision in state law for opting out of the tests. Whether districts need to be as caring as they can in looking at specific scenarios that parents present, that youngsters present, that's a question for districts to contemplate. The federal government requires a 95% participation rate of every state regarding annual assessments. That's a provision that stems from No Child Left Behind and continues even in the era of the waivers from NCLB. So that's my set of responses for you, Representative. Well,
thank you, Commissioner. Just with all due respect, I'm not sure that we have an answer yet because it's clear that you are trying to create a low anxiety environment. Nevertheless, for whatever reasons, and I won't make a judgment on that, there still appears to be a lot of anxiety. And with that anxiety comes the desire on the part of a lot of parents to choose not to have their children take the tests. And so their question remains, is there a consequence for them or for their children if they do not take the tests either now or forever? And so is that a question? I understand there's no provision in the law. The law does not require it. It does require the districts to administer the tests. But what is the answer for these parents who want to know if there are consequences?
Well, consequences can be institutional and they can be individual. You know, on the individual level, I don't believe that there's any specific provision in law regarding consequences. But on a district-by-district basis, there needs to be a conversation on that front as to whether there are policies that are not state-based. To my knowledge, there are no state provisions that are specific or federal provisions that are specific to an individual parent or an individual student. Having said that, there are broader consequences. The 95% participation rate, which is a federal law, does exist. And there have been cautions that have been presented to other states when they have flagrantly provided for policies that are contrary to that law, or contemplated policies that are contrary to that law. Whether there would be funding consequences to Connecticut if we were to flagrantly establish an opt-out procedure or some other consequence, I don't know the answer to that, but I know that other states have been cautioned by the feds in the past around having explicit policies of this kind.
But if I were to, as a representative, respond to a constituent individually, there are no consequences for you or your child, would I be correct?
I think I've answered that question by explaining that I don't believe there's an explicit provision in law at the federal or state level, but I can't answer for a school district. We are in a local control state where requirements are imposed at the local level and procedures exist at the local level, and I believe that's precisely how I've answered the question.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
I would ask folks who are here from the public to please keep it down. We have a standard in the General Assembly that you're here. We are all here to listen to people give their testimony, not to offer side remarks. Representative Kukuruda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon, Representative.
In your testimony, you talk about that and obviously we would expect you to be working closely with the newly appointed task force for Common Core. Can you address concerns that I'm hearing in this building, I'm hearing in my district, that we're not hearing all voices on this task force with the appointees, that it really is not balanced, and that's a concern. Could you address it, please?
I'd be happy to. I'm not sure which imbalance someone might be describing in their perception, but what I would say is I'm very pleased with what the governor has assembled in the way of a task force. It includes the array of education stakeholders that we ought to be hearing from. We've been making a big effort at the direction of the governor and the leadership of the General Assembly to flex our requirements in the evaluation system in response to feedback, to continuously reach out to teachers, to parents, and to students. But there's a need for more. There's a need for more feedback. There's a need for a forum for that purpose, and that's why Governor Malloy has wisely created the task force. It's predominantly teachers and other educators. It includes superintendents and principals, so their voices can be heard. It includes parents, so parents' voices can be heard. But I'd be very interested in hearing if there are concerns that you've heard specifically, Representative, about other voices or other groups, because the task force is a body, and in that sense is a forum for the dialogue, but there will no doubt be opportunities for the task force and certainly for the State Department of Education to have additional meetings, to receive other input, and we would welcome that.
To follow up, I think what the concern is, and I agree with you, the stakeholders, I think it's been done very well with, and not a little light on parents, but I believe it's just going to be two, but with teachers and principals, superintendents. My real question is, do we have superintendents that don't embrace this on this task force, are not embracing, and obviously we have some that do, and it's a controversy. So we really want this controversy to be the focus of this task force to settle it. And so if you don't have a balanced view, if we only have one viewpoint of where this Common Core and the SBAC test should be going, there's concern